In this video, I'll be sharing my thoughts on how the music in Genshin Impact moves with the story. This is just my personal perspective and analysis of HoYo-Mix's work, looking at things like the textures and instruments they choose, how the music connects with the characters, and how it supports the mood of different cutscenes. As a media composer, I believe our job goes beyond just making the music sound good. It's about crafting music that aligns with the visuals and helps tell the story, and also make our directors or producers happy. Before anything else, I'd like to introduce myself. Hello, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Melomue, and I'm a composer for film, TV, and games. I have a master's degree in screen scoring, and throughout my career, I've worked alongside with an Emmy-nominated composer. I've written music that were featured on Disney, Hulu, Netflix, and various Academy qualifying film festivals. I have played Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero since their launch. I actually already wrote a huge chunk of this video essay or analysis back in 2021 and published it on HoYoLab. If you're one of those who have read the Ayaka dance music analysis, I'd love to know in the comments. But anyway, at that time, I wasn't confident in making it into a video, but since I started this YouTube channel now, why not? I wanted to share my thoughts as a big fan of HoYo-Mix's music, and I just love how cinematic Genshin's soundtrack is. Disclaimer, the following is my personal analysis as a composer and should not be interpreted as a definitive interpretation of the work. It is not intended to represent the intentions or views of the original composers or music department in any way. Now let's start. Aside from high-quality production, there are three components that make up why Hoyoverse's music works so well, and we're going to talk about each of them. Number one is themes, second is conceptualization, and third is film scoring, all of which are interconnected. Let's talk about themes first. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to film and video game music, and a key ingredient to what makes the music memorable for the listeners are the themes, motifs, and leitmotifs that composers create. While it is incredibly difficult to track Genshin's many themes, motifs, and leitmotifs due to the enormous number of tracks and cutscenes published so far, let's look at some of the popular ones. Bear in mind that the definitions of theme, motif, and leitmotifs would depend on the intentions of the composers. For the purposes of this video, let's quickly define what a theme, motif, and leitmotif are. A theme is a musical phrase or melody created by composers to represent a specific idea. It's often the most recognizable part of the music in movies, TV shows, and other media. A motif is a shorter musical phrase that reinforces an idea, typically smaller than a theme. A motif can be part of a theme. Lastly, a leitmotif is a musical phrase used to represent a person, place, or thing. A leitmotif can be derived from a motif, and a motif can come from a theme. It really all boils down to how it was used and the composer's intentions. Essentially, these terms overlap, so don't worry too much if you're unsure whether a musical phrase is a theme, motif, or leitmotif. Anyway, let's move on to the examples. Here are a few of them. First is the battle theme. As many players might have guessed, we have the battle theme, which has been used in each nation's battle track. It has been showcased in different variations, modes, instrumentation, or keys. it has also been showed in some of the early Genshin character demos, like Diona and Eula.
So unless something is urgent, don't bother me.
I also noticed that the battle theme is interestingly part of the new Natlan area soundtrack. The track called Prismatic Proverbs plays in the area of the Masters of the Night Wind. Even if it's not a battle track, do you think there is some kind of lore implication with this? I'm not well versed with Genshin lore, so if you have theories, drop it in the comments below. Second is the Fatui transformation, motif, or leitmotif. There's also the Fatui theme that we hear whenever there is a Fatui involved in game cutscenes. We can also hear it in different scales or modes. In this example, I'll be showing you the same leitmotif that is shown whenever one of the Fatui harbingers would transform to their most powerful form.
He's activating his spell legacy!
Although when it comes to Scaramouche, I noticed he does have his own leitmotif, so maybe that's something that we could talk about in a different video. Let me know in the comments below. And lastly, we have Kazuha's motif or leitmotif. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the various leitmotifs our characters have in the game. For example, Kazuha's leitmotif plays during stories centered around him or whenever he makes a dramatic entrance, emphasizing his presence.
Dissimilar. Kazuha, I hope you don't think I risked taking you in just to listen to your musings.
I'm aware. But we ought not waste the moonlight. Not before a big battle. Solitary cloud. Shadow in the setting sun. And the last line. I finally reached the top of the mountain. I looked out with the clouds beneath my feet and only the gentle breeze murmuring in my ears. The highest mountain is a clear and enlightened heart. Here there is no self, no hatred, no regret.
Do you have a favorite theme or leitmotif? If you'd like me to dive deeper into analyzing the different themes, motifs, and leitmotifs of your favorite characters, let me know in the comments below. Now we're going to talk about conceptualization. When it comes to composition for films and video games, it's not just about writing music. It's about creating an entire auditory world and making sure that each element in the track accompanies the storytelling aspect of the game. When it comes to Genshin Impact, there's much more to consider than just its themes. The music has to reflect the various elements, styles, genres, and character arcs that make up the essence of the game. All of these aspects work together to shape the overall concept of Genshin Impact soundtrack. Let's take a look at Raiden Shogun's weekly boss battle track. This is part of the domain called Magatsumitake Narokami no Mikoto. In the beginning of the track, we start with a loud, aggressive synth that emulates the sound of thunder. We have the following elements in this track. First is the loud Brahms-sounding synths and commanding brass section. This signifies the quote-unquote violet thunder, the power and the authority Raiden's Shogun has over Inazuma. Second are the synths or electronic elements. I believe this signifies the puppet aspect of Raiden Shogun and her electro element. Third is the Japanese instrumentation like shakuhachi, shamisen, koto, kotsuzumi, and more. This is needed since Inazuma is inspired by Japan. We also have the shakuhachi melody, and if you listen carefully, notice how this is the only instrument in the track that feels gentle. The rest are aggressive, loud, and commanding. This could signify Raiden Shogun's actual state in which, despite her seemingly cold, uncaring exterior, she's actually very delicate on the inside. And this has been revealed during her story quest. Next, we have band instruments like the electric guitar, drums, and more. This gives an aggressive texture to the track and represents Raiden's unrelenting character. Next is this string melody that gives that cinematic feel, and the melody gives us a hint of Inazuma since it's one of the leitmotifs for Inazuma's theme. Lastly, we have string staccatos and the koto. The rigidity of the strings and the koto highlights a stubbornness. The cool thing about these elements is that you can also connect them to the Shoki no Kami theme or Scaramouche's boss battle theme. And for the Genshin Impact players out there, we know that Scaramouche is A's puppet, a direct derivative of her. But that's for another video. If you'd like me to go analyze these two tracks together, let me know in the comments. Now moving on to one of my favorite parts, the film scoring. Film scoring is the process of composing music with specific cues that sync with the visuals of a film, media, or in Genshin's case, a cutscene. It enhances the storytelling aspect of a visual, or it can shape the audience's perception depending on the music synced to the visuals. For this one, we are going to look at Ayaka's dance cutscene. If you have not played Ayaka's story quest at this point, then consider this a spoiler. Although honestly, why have you not played it at this point? It has almost been 3 years since the release. Anyway, let's look at the cutscene in detail.
Oh, Traveler. Huh? There's something that I'd like to do. If you could spare me yet another moment. Please, keep your eyes on me.
We start with Ayaka's theme on solo piano. It's sparse, simple, and sounds intimate. It sets up the atmosphere and shows the newfound closeness Ayaka and the Traveler have in the story quest. The combination of notes played together here imply the feeling of wonder, purity, beauty, and innocence. What music people called seventh chords. They are stacked in a way that perfectly gives off Ayaka's vibe. It also has pauses or rests, which shows how Ayaka is reserved and how all her life she has been wanting to do some things but tends to hesitate due to her current status as the Shirasagi Himegimi, a model of perfection. The music pauses. This is a sign of hesitation, as Ayaka did her whole life having to want to go to the festival. And it adds a bit of strings, violins, violas, cellos, double basses, which signifies how Ayaka is starting to show a bit more of herself and being open to the traveler. Strings usually are used for emotional scenes, as they give this quote-unquote human touch. All of a sudden, the piano disappears, and we hear a lot of strings and woodwinds, flutes, clarinets, etc. throughout the time Ayaka is dancing. This is her moment, and this is her human side. The strings play Ayaka's theme, while the woodwinds aid the strings with a different melody, what we could possibly call a counter melody at this point, and also plays some of the melody, just because orchestration-wise it's also a good idea. The strings and woodwinds' change of rhythm shows Ayaka's growth. She doesn't hesitate anymore. She goes for it, and she shows her real self to the traveler. The music elevates and adds more instruments in the track, highlighting Ayaka's character growth in the story quest, still with elegance and feeling of triumph with the trumpet sound that comes in. This elevation was done with the choice of notes that modulated, what music people would call key change, and additional instrumentation, like the harp that was added, giving it a magical feel. The modulation of the music signifies Ayaka coming out of her comfort zone. Her character grew from someone being reserved and caring about what other people think to her allowing herself to sometimes have fun and not be too hard on herself based on what others might think. She moved past her comfort zone. The modulation shows movement, growth, and a new beginning. And then we end with the woodwinds echoing her theme again, as if to say that Ayaka has achieved the simple kind of freedom that she wanted. Another thing I want to point out is where the tracks were placed in the game. I believe it tells a lot about the stories we experience in-game. Here are other versions of Ayaka's theme or variations in the game, namely, Her Legacy, Kitsune's Mask, Hanachiru Sato, and Time to Say Farewell. These tracks play around the areas where Ayaka resides, around Kamisato Estate, and by one of the significant areas Ayaka and the traveler went to. If you go south of Kamisato Estate, going to Chinju Forest, sometimes Hanachiro Sato and Time to Say Farewell Place. If you go to east of Kamisato Estate, sometimes Her Legacy and Kitsune's Mask Place. If you go beyond the gates of Chinju Forest, Time to Say Farewell and Everlasting Devotion Place. This track, Everlasting Devotion, though, can be considered a derivative of Ayaka's theme. There's also a track called Where the Shirasagi Dances that is a derivation of Ayaka's theme. You can listen to this whenever you go to Kamisato Estate. If you listen to the koto real close, it's actually Ayaka's theme but rearranged in such a way that it embodies the whole of the Kamisato clan, not just Ayaka. The koto's melody stemmed from Ayaka's melody to create the track you hear when you go to the Kamisato Estate. The fact that her theme is central to the melody of her clan shows just how important she is to the clan. I think that's it for now. I believe there's so much more to talk about with Genshin's music, but with the limited time I have, I'll stop right here. As I mentioned earlier, this is just my perspective as a composer, and this is not the end-all be-all. I tried to flesh out my ideas and tried my best to articulate it for you. I hope you found something interesting here. If you like this type of video, let me know in the comments below and I'd be happy to make more detailed analysis of the HoYo-Mix's tracks that you love. Thank you for watching.